دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Finding Me on the ITV networks. Today I have four of the most amazing people whom I refer to as the best of South Africans, the youth of South Africa. And we're going to talk about the Fees Must Fall protests and about particular individual experiences and particular individual identities that come to play in the Fees Must Fall protests. And so with that, I'd like to say Assalamu alaikum and welcome, and thank you to all of you beautiful, the best of South African people.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so Naledi, let's start with you first.
All right.
You and Naledi Chelwa, you're a master's student in drama at the University of Pretoria. You're also an active member of the EFF, right?
I am the national spokesperson of the Students' Command.
Of EFF at UP, right?
No, nationally.
National, sorry, national, okay. And you have been victimized, you have been targeted, and you have been slapped with suspensions.
Yes.
So that is your identity, how I want my viewers to view you today, okay?
All right.
Okay, and then Yaka Olofse, you at the Center for Diversity at the University of Witwatersrand, but you're an alumni of Tux, but you're also still actively involved. And I think your Afrikaner identity makes it important for you to relate to the struggle, particularly at Tux, because this is something that hits home, right?
Yes. Well, apart from the fact that I'm alumni and also that much of my academic work that I do focuses on Afrikaner identities and politics, and that is probably where it's been most active at the University of Pretoria.
Okay, and then we have Iram Yusuf. You're a final year LLB student at the University of Pretoria. You're a Muslim student, and there's big questions about the Muslim participation in the Fees Must Fall struggle, and it relates to that particular identity. So thank you for being here. And our final guest, and that is Ontatile Modise. Spicy. You're going to bring the personal humanity and the human experience of the struggle to this particular conversation. I'm pretty sure about that. Okay, you're a second-year law student.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like all the trouble happens in law and politics at the University of Pretoria. Ironically, of course, because it is said that the law faculty is one of the most verkrampte faculties at the University of Pretoria. So perhaps that verkrampteness has bred this kind of rebellion.
Yes.
I would say thank you very much for being here, Tatile. But you're also part of the EFF political movement. Have you been suspended?
No, I haven't been suspended yet.
Yes.
I'm hoping I'm not after this. I'm the transformation officer of the EFF UP, and I was also a councillor candidate for the EFF in Hatfield.
Okay, fantastic. So I want to start by reading this particular quote by Julius Nyerere, one of our great fathers in terms of African leadership. And he said that the foundation and the objective of African socialism is the extended family, ujamaa, or familyhood, which describes our socialism. It is opposed to capitalism, which seeks to build a happy society on the basis of the exploitation of man by man. And it is equally opposed to doctrinaire socialism, which seeks to build its happy society on a philosophy of conflict between man and man. We in Africa have no more need of being converted to socialism than we have of being taught democracy. Both are rooted in our past, in the traditional society which produced us. And I think perhaps that based on what Nyerere has just said, it comes to everything that the students are fighting for, that you're still being told how to articulate, when you can articulate, where you can articulate, what you can articulate. And also you are told what systems should govern you, what systems should regulate you, and what systems should determine your identity. So these are all, I think, constructs that are rooted in the Fees Must Fall struggle. As a black South African woman, how do you see and relate to the Fees Must Fall protest, Naledi?
It's a very complex or conflicting space, both internally and externally, especially because, you know, growing up as a black girl, you're taught of your identity outside of yourself. So you're taught of your identity in relation to other people. You're a daughter, you're a sister, you know, you're a student. You are never taught or you are never allowed to be what you are inside. You can never have the time to reflect inside, and when you do, then you are destabilizing the platform or the surroundings in your area, because they all work against your body. They all work against your mind, against your voice. You know, so it's a very complex space. Even as we protest this, there's a lot of times where we have to digress and think, okay, this is not healthy anymore for me as a female black body. This is no longer safe anymore for me. This is no longer, you know, this is no longer unity. There's nothing unified about what's happening at this time and moment in relation to my body. But we still compromise even that stance, because that's what we know. The black woman only knows how to unite. The black woman knows only how to protect. That's why we see women giving up their bodies, being naked and all those things. They only know how to protect the movement, the people, and never themselves. Nobody's out there to protect the black woman. Nobody's out there to ask, in this current economy, what is the black female's position, circumstances, you know, how is she affected? In fact, the black woman is always speaking on behalf of everyone else all the time.
But nobody speaks on behalf of
No, and she doesn't
in the true
expect
sense,
that.
yes, in the true sense. So I sense a lot of emotion, and before I come to the two of you, I want to raise that with you, Aunt Adile. Is it the sense, because as Naledi was speaking, she said that the black woman is always protecting. I was thinking about the apartheid narrative, where you saw the black woman always as a nanny, as a domestic worker, always there to do the protection, the caring, the loving for somebody else. But she had to sacrifice her own self and her own family in order to do for somebody else. And do you find that it's the continuation of this narrative as you stand there in the protest and the struggle? You know, although now you're fighting for your own rights, but at many times you're also challenged.
Absolutely. I remember one incident last week during a night vigil that we held. So in all of the whole space now, only the men were given platform to speak. So me and Naledi particularly raised this thing. It was like, no, don't come here with the feminism. Basically, I as the black woman always have to keep in mind that the black man is here. I always have to make space for him. My body is not that important. Even when we're putting our bodies on the line, I have to think that, no, I must, as much as I must put my body on the line, I have to think about the black man. The black man has always been my man. So it's very complex. We are basically continuing this apartheid narrative that I, as the black woman, have to sit back and allow the men to liberate me. And I just thought of this very cool quote that I read about from Buchi's book. It was, "The woman shall liberate the land." So when you look at the struggles today, there's nothing like that. There's a popular narrative among student activists that if you mention the word feminism, you're basically going to get ostracized for saying that. And it's a problem. Basically, I, as the black woman, always have to take a step back and allow people to lead me, even if I know I have the capabilities and I know my struggles, but I have to articulate my struggles in a certain way that does not offend the black man. So it's extremely problematic for us.
So from both of your personalities, it's like this internal dynamics happening while at the same time you're struggling for a greater purpose.
Yeah, especially the conflict comes when, you know, we love black people. We love black men. That's where the conflict comes in. And as a black woman, I do want to protect the black man. I do want to protect my children. I do want to protect my siblings. That's where the conflict comes in, you know, because you never know which side to choose.
You don't know how to balance between yourself
and if there is a space to balance, I don't think we are there yet of achieving balance. We fight for it, we force it, and we get ostracized for it, we get alienated for it, but it's who we are. You know, we have to balance.
But everything that you're saying, Iram, sounds to me very much like what the Muslim woman identity is going through as well. Muslim women are in the same kind of a situation where they're forced to protect. If you look at what's happening in the conflicts in Syria, in Palestine, etc., and the way in which the Muslim body, the body of the Muslim woman is always used as a means of targeting the Muslim population, as the body of the black person is used to target the black person. And so there's a very strong narrative here. And how do you as a Muslim student then view the Fees Must Fall protest?
Well, firstly, as a Muslim, we can't be disconnected from political, economic, social injustice. We have to stand up for oppression in every form. And we are actually the extended family of the black body. And so we have to come together with the black body and we need to stand beside them. But more importantly, as Muslim women, we are an extension of the black Muslim, of the black person, of the black woman actually. Because our struggles are so intertwined. With the Fees Must Fall protest, we have the call for decolonization, and intertwined with that is that we need to dismantle and deconstruct the spaces where the colonial regimes constantly police black women bodies and Muslim women bodies. And so together those two are linked because they are constantly in the same frame together. What you see in the Muslim woman is as her being victimized and constantly oppressed, you have it in the black woman as well.
So you can see that the parallels are there. Now, Jaco, yours, of course, being the only man on the panel, but I mean, there's a unique identity here, and that is the Afrikaans identity. And so as an Afrikaans person, Afrikaans-speaking person, and I've been taught not to say in Afrikaner because there's different connotations to that, but as an white Afrikaans-speaking person, because there are Afrikaans-speaking people who are not white, and I think very often we forget about that. So how do you view the protests?
Well, the first thing that I realized is that you get a lot of people who say that, white people's involvement in the movement has been very little, and you don't see a lot of white people. But it's interesting, the whole movement, the whole thing is because of whiteness and white supremacy. It's against that, it's against Eurocentrism. As a white Afrikaans-speaking person, I see the involvement myself and the involvement of white people in general it's starkly contrasting the involvement of other people, and where they are more central to the struggle. I find white people to be in particular their role must be of support, auxiliary. If our assistance is called for, we will be there. We always speak from a position of privilege. That's the issue, especially with the Fees Must Fall movement. Everything that this movement has been dealing with is issues of privilege: access to university, the type of education that students have to learn, how classes are structured, the transport to campus, the way the university is built, all the way down to the architecture of the university is, well, in favor of a Eurocentric white community. The Afrikaans community in particular has shown quite a resistance towards the Fees Must Fall movement, in particular at the universities of Pretoria, at the universities of the Free State and so forth. And they particularly are speaking from also, again, a place of privilege, because what the movement is doing, it is challenging exactly that. So if we reflect on UP and the University of the Free State, which is historically Afrikaans universities, and Stellenbosch as well, that is the very thing that is being challenged, is the fact that these are Afrikaans universities, that they historically built as Afrikaans universities for the purpose to exclude people of color, English people, etc., to promote Afrikaner nationalism, Afrikaner identities. And that separation you made between an Afrikaner and an Afrikaans person is very, very important, because Afrikaners are those who are the gatekeepers. Those are the ones making things very difficult for us to make this process go forward. Your white Afrikaans-speaking people. And Afrikaans people would be then, well, obviously people who are not white, but they also speak Afrikaans, because the language in itself is exceptionally diverse. And you will get dialects of Afrikaans that a white Afrikaans person won't even understand.
Okay, so we're at the end of the first segment, so we have to go to a break. But when we come back now, we're going to take the momentum a little bit higher. As you say, we are ready, right?
We are ready.
We are ready. Okay. We'll see you after the break.
بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the second segment of the first interview on Finding Me today in the ITV networks with my four of the best South Africans of Naledi, Jaco, Iram, and Ontatile. Ontatile, yes, sorry, I'm going to get this right. Okay, so Ontatile, let's come back to you, because that's where, we picked up the kind of challenges that you said and what Naledi brought also to the fore. What Jaco has been speaking about, this particular gatekeeping that raises, and seeing that you're a law student as well. We have two kind of narratives that are coming out in the Fees Must Fall protest, and we see it yesterday with Take Wits Back, and now the supposed movement that's going to come up, which they're saying is being prepared to take tax back. There's this dialogue on rights. So these who want to take Wits back say, we have rights too. We want to go back to class. And the Fees Must Fall protesters are fighting from a position of rights. You're articulating about a failure to recognize, to have your rights realized. When you're faced with these two kinds of questions between the rights of those who are protesting the rights want to go back to class, how would you then respond, and what do you say?
It's this one. It's so crazy. It's weird. Even it's like I, as a protester, don't also have a right to education. It's even weird. For example, in Tax is a historically Afrikaans university, so we face a lot of opposition from AfriForum and the likes of AfriForum, and that's as well. So when because AfriForum is predominantly males, when males from Afrikaner males come to us and say, no, I want to go to class and learn. But you've been learning for the past 20 years. I'm trying to gain access into class. My fight is not even about getting education. It's about access. That's what they also don't understand. It's way bigger than going into class. I think that's why they miss the part the most. It's about claiming space and asserting your presence as a black person in this community. I'm in a university, but I do not feel like I belong in this space. Every time that I go to campus, I have to be in a certain mode. For example, it's recess now. Whenever I go home, I don't fit in because I'm in university. When I come to university, I have to be in a certain mode as well. So we don't fit into the spaces that we are in. So this Fees Must Fall fight is also a fight for presence within the university. So when a person comes and says, I also want to learn, what about me? What about presence? Can you also assert our presence first? Before learning, before education, there's also humanity. Before I'm a protester, I'm human as well. So that's the part that people don't see. Before the protest and all, there was also a thing of, I'm tired of all this. I'm tired of being in a space where I don't belong. I'm tired of paying funds that I don't have. So ours was basically, let's fight for things that we have presence and we can assert our humanity in. So this thing of taking back tax is just basically a very weird narrative. I find it scary that Afrikaner men who have the most privilege are gonna come and fight us as black people for privilege when they're already the most privileged people in the planet. Like it's even weird to begin with. I feel like taking vets was, for me, taking vets back was better, because considering the circumstances, tax and vets are two different universities. For example, from a side of taking vets back, there's also a side of the white English speaking students say this and this and this. But when you come to tax, there's the thing that no, you are disrupting our Afrikanerness, you are disrupting our culture, you are disrupting who I am. But what about me? What about the black students from Haranko who cannot even speak English to begin with? What about those things? So that's what Fees Must Fall. We aim to also achieve in these things, to assert our presence within the university space. So this thing of taking tax back is basically something that's gonna delegitimize our efforts and make us look like we're hooligans who don't even want to go to class, and that's not the case. It's deeper than this. It's about fulfilling a generational mission. It's about asserting your presence in a world where you're labeled as not human enough because of blackness. So this of taking tax back is about delegitimizing our struggles, mainly because we are black people and we don't have anything to do or say.
Okay, but now, lady, I have to. I understand everything that you say, but the fact that you're saying that it's different between take tax back and take vets back, for me, I don't think it's much different, because I think what originally happens, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that the focus has always been as if the Afrikaans, previously Afrikaans universities are the most verkrampt, but we've seen the way in which Rhodes Must Fall manifested and how they gate-kept at UCT, and we see it at Rhodes University also. So about protecting that privilege, about protecting that identity is manifested in the English-speaking universities as well. And so for me, these are simultaneously happening, maybe with different narratives, but the extent, the consequence, the impact is the same. Because, I mean, you've seen what the Rhodes students are going through, the violence at Rhodes University, you've seen what's happening at UCT, and I mean, you've been extensively involved in calling back for the comrades who have been arrested, etc. What was just addressed now is about, again, decolonization, calling for that decolonization of the institutional culture, etc. So Fees Must Fall for you is then taking it beyond just the fees?
I mean, of course, the reason why I agree with her is because, well, I don't know the dynamics because I've never been in those spaces, but say except for vets, I've been at vets, and the spaces are totally different. I protest at tax, at vets and another university are not the same. Like, particularly at tax for me, the experience is that it's not necessarily about protecting white privilege, but protecting white Afrikaans privilege. That is the difference. That is why white English speakers in Tuks will actually be with us at the picket lines, because they also see that the majority, which is Afrikaans-speaking people, are actually protecting Afrikaners, if there is such a word.
So they're making an exclusion between whites and whites themselves.
Yes, and more so because this year we made Afrikaans fall. You know, the FFSC spearheaded that fight from last year, the beginning of the year, and before that, you know, we've been saying Afrikaans must fall, but this year we actually made it fall. So they also want to redeem their position, because for them, they fell. Because that's where the premise of their power lies in, at the University of Pretoria. It's in the language. That's why their placards are written in Afrikaans, and they're chanting Afrikaans slogans and all those things. That's why they're not saying take UP back, they're saying take Tuks back. You know, it's about...
Oh yes, the way in which the language is articulated, Tuks as opposed to University.
Exactly, they don't recognize, they recognize UP in other conversations. But now the conversation is not even fees. They're not talking about fees. They're not saying, okay, but there's no increments anymore. They're not having that conversation. It's not about fees. It's about Afrikaans.
It's about the gatekeeping again and ownership.
Yes, we are threatening Afrikanerness. You know, at residences, we are saying the status quo must change. Like, we keep on coming at them, and it's like a baby with their doll. You know, they believe this is mine. Yes. And when you're saying, okay, you can't
play share
with
it,
this anymore, or you give your friend, it becomes a problem. What do you mean? I have to share this. I've dressed her, I've done her hair, so it's mine. I'm gonna take it back. Even when they leave, I'm gonna have to take it back.
Yes.
You know, it's that possessiveness. This is mine.
So ultimately, it's about them never wanting to, or never admitting to Jaco, to surrendering control, that we let you in. You're here on our terms. You stay under our conditions.
I think that's a mentality. But, you know, if I look at AfriForum in particular at the University of Pretoria, you know, there's that famous European picture, I can't remember, it's 17th century Renaissance picture of three bald naked men eating each other, right? They're attached to each other. They're eating each other, right? So I think that's what AfriForum is becoming. It's starting to consume itself. It's really so contradictory how they run. So AfriForum wants to always point out that they hate it when non-white people associate them with English people, right? Because they say always when racism is discussed, it's always us Afrikaners who take the blame, but the English never get it. But now they're doing exactly that. They're separating themselves purposefully away from the English students. So at the Afrikaans Must Fall protest this year, when I was there as well, I counted 8 white people who were supporting the Afrikaans Must Fall movement. And out of those 8, there was only 1 Afrikaans person, and that was me. And the other 7 were English-speaking people, liberals, if you want to call them that. So, but the rest of them were all from AfriForum, and they were all men opposing this movement. But the other thing that we also need to understand, I think, in particular about this attitude of this is our university, is because firstly, I think, to say what, to go out to her, is that I don't think these Afrikaans people, or white people in general, they do not recognize black pain. They do not legitimize it. They don't see it as serious. They actually think it is something that should be on par with their own. So that's the thing I think what most white people need to understand is there is almost nothing in this world that we can say we can start at an equal footing because of a historical heritage that was built on even emotions. We had a conversation about this, Lady and I, beforehand, about how emotions in itself is a political thing. And if black people respond in a specific way emotionally, let's put it that way, it is different from if a white person did it. If a white person did it, the power relations would have made him sound like a dictator, an oppressor, a racist. But a black person, on the other hand, is venting black anger. And that is one thing white people don't have time for. They don't care. That just, I think, plays a fundamental role as to why they simply cannot see this as an important thing. And my question that I personally want to ask the AfriForum people is, take Tuks back, or UP from whom?
From who? And for who? Exactly.
Because you're going to take it back from yourselves, ultimately, right? The university is still an Afrikaans university. You see busts and statues of Afrikaner academics who we do not even know on campus. From who are we taking it back? Most of the academics are still white Afrikaans men. Most of them are...
It's yours
it's already theirs. This whole movement started.
So it's a pretense, actually. It's a farce, isn't it? It's a farce.
It's an absolute farce.
You've never given it up in the first place.
Never.
just to add on to what he says, it's so weird that these people police our angers. As a black person, when I go into tax and I experience a certain level of oppression, I have to react in a certain way or else I'm going to deemed like a rascal. For example, for Christmas, we were supposed to have peaceful, the university for now have prescribed ways for us to protest. If we don't protest in those ways, we are basically rascals or what. So they oppress you, and there's also a way for you to react to it. So your existence is being policed, your reaction is also being policed. It's very weird what's happening right now. And the issue of me saying that take back vets and take back tax is different in a sense that tax is a historical Afrikaans university. For them, it's not even about fees, it's about the culture, the humanity. Tax, the AfriForum places humanity in a statue. For them, when you disrupt even a class, you're disrupting their privilege, you're disrupting who they are. Their humanity is in that university because they identify themselves with everything within that university. If you disrupt even a mere lecture, it's about no, you're disrupting our grandfather's legacy, our ancestors. So it's deep for them. So that's why we also want to disrupt the spaces of privilege to also, this sounds so liberal, but not also only to accommodate us, but to build the spaces for everyone. Because you can't have situations whereby only a certain group of people feel at home within a whole university. It's wrong.
Okay, would you like to add something to that?
Yes, but Muslim people have become so privileged as well. They've also they've assimilated into this idea of whiteness. So they too as well, they look at black pain as something foreign to them, and they can't relate to that. And so what they need to do is they need to take a step back and realize that that black pain is their pain as well, and they need to learn to identify and tap into that pain, and then they'll be able to properly relate to the struggle.
And this is also in many cases, I think, related to very Muslim students who are of privilege, who've become comfortable post 1994, now that there's the so-called political freedoms, etc. But we find that, I mean, heading the struggle at WITS, you have two Muslim women, Shaira Kala and Fasiha Hassan. Also, they're from privilege, but they have identified with the struggle. So, and surprisingly, it's Muslim women who are at the forefront. Much like with you guys also, in spite of the challenges that you face, it's the women who are at the front sacrificing the most, facing all sorts of violence. So it's patriarchal violence, it's institutional violence, systemic violence, symbolic violence, subjective violence, violence of language, violence of articulation. You have very many challenges at play here. So coming back to Naledi, you raised a very important thing, and that was about the suspensions, and I want to come back to that very quickly. You said you were 5 months pregnant.
8
months pregnant.
I was heavily I could have given birth at that time alone.
During the Afrikaans Must Fall movement. You were not even present, but you were suspended.
I was even shocked when the suspension came because I'm at home rubbing my tummy and then my phone vibrates, and then they didn't even write it properly. Like the grammar was just off. Like you could see this.
They were desperate to get it out there.
They were so desperate. You are temporarily suspended. And I'm like, it's actually temporarily suspended from the premise of you must vacate. And then that evening I was supposed to go to campus. I went in there, and then I was told to vacate, but late at night. And I was heavily pregnant. Where did they think I was supposed to go? You know, this is a second protest I'm being suspended for unfairly. I mean, I went there for 10 minutes just to monitor the situation and to amp up the comrades to say, be strong. I have to go down and shut down Mpumalanga that side. If I had to get a suspension or any action of you know, a reaction from any university, it would have to be University of Mpumalanga, because that's where we are actively involved. And I just want to make a comment in reaction to what she said. I don't think it's the fact that they don't recognize black pain. They do. Afrikaner people and white people recognize black pain. They know that education is supposed to be free, and all those things, like all those minor details surrounding inequality, race, whatnot, class, gender, and all those things. It's just that whiteness is built on the premises of black pain. There is no whiteness if there
Without
is no black pain. Exactly.
It's the foundation.
There is no interviews without black pain. There is no institutional whatnot without black pain. Is the premise for everything that's happening in the country right now. It's the premise for capitalism. It's the premise for profit. For even when they fight with, even when they support us, even when Yaku is at the picket lines, that wouldn't be there if there was no black pain. The support, the relationship of whiteness and blackness lies solely on black pain. There is no world today without black pain. There is no reaction of anyone towards what's happening if there's no black pain. So they do recognize it. It's just, that's what whiteness is
But then
based
to
on.
acknowledge it would then mean would mean a total catastrophe.
Yes,
for
whiteness
them.
has no identity
And to
without
deal.
black pain.
Okay, but we're at the end. So, and I think it's a very powerful moment to end on and to conclude on. We're coming back for a second interview. So I'd like to say thank you very much for being here and for sharing those first emotional moments with me. So how do we spice it up? We are ready. Okay.
Didn't they tell you that I was a savage?
Okay. We're coming back for the savage part in part 2. Fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي